today's going to be chapters 4 and 5. Chapter 4 is pretty short, so I combined it with 5. I want you to look for today examples of personification and put them in the comments when we're done. Now, personification, remember, is when you give human qualities to things that aren't human. And there's a strong example of what Luke is perceiving as human qualities to something in his life. Okay, so look for that example and then see if you could figure out and put it in the comments. Chapter 4. Luke found out what Mother meant a few days later. When he came down for breakfast, as usual, he opened the door from the back stair to the kitchen only a crack. He could remember barely a handful of times in his entire life when someone had dropped by before breakfast, and each time Mother had managed to send Matthew or Mark up to warn Luke to stay out of sight. But he always checked. Today, he could see Dad and Matthew and Mark at the table, and knew from the sound of the frying bacon that Mother must be at the stove. "Are the shades closed?" he said softly. Mother opened the door to the stairs. Luke started to step into the kitchen, but she put her arm out to keep him back. She handed him a plate full of scrambled eggs and bacon. "Luke, honey, can you eat sitting at the bottom step there?" "What?" Luke asked. Mother looked beseechingly over her shoulder. "Dad thinks, it's not safe anymore to have you in the kitchen. You can still eat with us and talk to us and all, but you'll be over here." She waved her hand toward the stairs behind Luke. "But with the shades pulled," Luke started. "One of those workers asked me yesterday, 'Hey, farmer, you got air conditioning in that house of yours?'" Dad said from the table. He didn't turn around. He didn't seem to want to look at Luke. "We keep the shades pulled. A hot day like today, people get suspicious. This way is safer. I'm sorry." And then Dad did turn around and glance at Luke once. Luke tried to keep from looking upset. "So what'd you tell him?" Matthew asked, as if the worker's question was only a matter of curiosity. "Told him, of course, we don't have air conditioning. Farming don't make nobody a millionaire." Dad took a long sip of coffee. "Okay, Luke," Mother asked. "Yes," he mumbled. He took a plate of eggs and bacon, but it didn't look good to him now. He knew every bite he ate would stick in his throat. He sat down on the steps, out of sight of both windows. "We'll leave the door open," Mother said. She hovered over him, as if unwilling to return to the stove. "This isn't too different, is it?" "Mother," Dad said warningly. Through the open window, Luke could hear rumbling of several trucks and cars. The workers had just arrived for the day. He knew from watching through the vent the past few days that the caravan of vehicles came up the road like a parade. The cars would peel off on the side, unload a nicer dressed men. The more rugged vehicles pulled on into the muddiest sections. The people inside would scatter to the bulldozers and the backhoes that had been left outside overnight. But the vehicles barely had time to get cold, because the workers were there now from sunup to sundown. Someone was in a hurry for them to finish. "Luke, I'm sorry," Mother said, and scurried back to the stove. She loaded a plate for herself and then sat down at the table, beside Luke's usual spot. His chair wasn't even in the kitchen anymore. For a while, Luke watched Dad, Mother, Matthew, and Mark eating in silence. A complete family of 4. Once he cleared his throat, ready to protest again. "You can't do this. It's not fair." Then he choked back the words unspoken. They were only trying to protect him. What could he do? Resolutely, Luke stuck his fork in a pile of scrambled eggs on his plate and took a bite. He ate the whole plateful of food without tasting any of it. Chapter 5. Luke ate every meal after that on the bottom step. It became a habit, but a hated one. He had never noticed before, but Mother often spoke too softly to be heard from any distance, and Matthew and Mark always made their nasty comments under their breath. So they would start laughing, often at Luke's expense, and he couldn't defend himself because he didn't know what they had said. He couldn't even hear Mother saying, "Now be nice, boys." After a week or two, a lot of the time, he didn't even try to listen to the rest of the family's conversations. But even he was curious on a hot July day when the letter arrived about the pigs. Matthew brought the mail in that day from the mailbox, at the crossroads a mile away. Luke had never seen them, of course, but Matthew and Mark had told him there were 3 mailboxes there, one for each of the families that lived on their road. Usually the Garner's mail was just bills or thin envelopes carrying curt orders from the government about how much corn to plant, which fertilizer to use, and where to take the crop when it was harvested. A letter from a relative was a cause to celebrate, and Mother always dropped whatever she was doing and sat down to open it with trembling hands, calling out at intervals, "Oh, Aunt Effie's in the hospital again," or "Tsk, Lisa Beth's going to marry that fellow after all." Luke almost felt he knew his relatives, though they lived hundreds of miles away. And of course, they didn't even know he existed. The letters Mother wrote back painstakingly late at night, when she saved up enough money for a stamp, contained plenty of news of Matthew and Mark, but never once had mentioned Luke's name. This letter was as thick as some of Luke's grandmother, but it bore an official seal, and the return address was embossed Department of Human Habitation, Environmental Standards Division. Matthew held the letter at arm's length, the way Luke had seen him hold a dead baby pig when they had to be carried out of the barn. Dad looked worried the minute he saw the letters in Matthew's hand. Matthew put the letter down beside Dad's silverware. Dad sighed. "Can't be anything but bad news," Dad said. "No use ruining a good meal. It can wait." He went back to eating chicken and dumplings. Only after his last belch did he turn the envelope over and run a dirt-rimmed fingernail under the flap. He unfolded the letter. "It has come to our attention," he read aloud. "Well, so far I understand it." Then he read silently for a while, calling out in intervals, "Mother, what's ofol, and where's that dictionary? Matthew, look up reciprocity." Finally, he threw down the whole thick packet and proclaimed, "They're going to make us get rid of our hogs." "What?" Matthew asked, more serious than Mark. He had talked for as long as anyone could remember about, "When I get my own farm, it's going to be all hogs. I'll make the government let me do that somehow." Now he looked over Dad's shoulder. "You mean they're just going to make us sell a lot at one time, right? But we can build the herd back up." "Nope," Dad said. "Those people in them fancy new houses won't be able to stand the pig smell. So we can't raise hogs no more." He threw the letter out into the center of the table for all to see. What they expect building next to a farm? From his seat on the stairs, Luke had to hold himself back from going to fish the edge of the letter out from the chicken gravy and looking at it himself. "They can't do that, can they?" he asked. Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. Luke felt like a fool for asking as soon as the words were out of his mouth. For once he was glad of his hiding place. Mother twisted a dish rag in her hand. "Those hogs are our bread and butter," she said. "With the grain prices the way they are, what are we going to live on?" Dad just looked at her. After a moment, so did Matthew and Mark. Luke didn't know why. So, I'll stop there.